Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
Alex, it's always good to hear from you. Here in Boulder, I just want to let you know it's a hot day, somewhere in the 90s. The wind is blowing the trees around, so it's not exactly my favorite weather, hot and windy. But I have a frosted goblet in front of me filled with a green chili ale from the hills of Salida, and courtesy of Soulcraft Brewing, so can't complain. And not only that, but I understand Tod might be joining us today, which is always added fun for me. Is that true?
Tod is with us now.
Wonderful.
Hey, Pablo, nice to hear your voice.
Tod, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much.
I believe that today we are discussing a black and white movie from 1962, directed by Tony Richardson, in which Alex highly recommended to me last week. It's called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, and the script was by Alan, am I saying it, Silito? Is that right?
Silito, yes.
Silito, who also
Alan Silito.
And he also wrote the short story that it's based on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Short story writer. Yep.
And it's a movie that follows, or the story follows a juvenile offender who gets sent to a reform school where his running prowess gets him the special attention of the governor who controls the joint. This movie has been on my list of movies to see, and I'm so glad that I finally did get to see it. So thank you for the recommendation, and I'm glad that you're both here to join to talk about it. I should just give you guys the microphone and let you take it away.
Hey, what did you think of it, Pablo? Before I ask what you thought of it, an important point is that the juvenile delinquent is from the north of England, not from the south of England. The south of England is where the money is in England, and the north is a more impoverished area, mainly impoverished by the southern part of England. So, what did you think of it?
I'm a sucker for this kind of film where let me backtrack a little bit. I really like films that are shot on location and that use natural lighting, and there's a certain amount of realism. There was a few moments that I don't think date well. And they're very few, but it's when they when they speed up the film, and it's almost like they were. I don't know if it was because of the French New Wave and they were just trying to be a little show-offy there, but those were the things.
I think it probably was, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of broke up the naturalism, which I was really digging. And there's one point that just made me laugh because of and I don't know if I should spoil it, but where they decide to stash the money, and the moment they decided upon this place, this gutter for the rain, and I was thinking, what, does it not rain in England? Is this?
Well,
So.
I will say that frequently the gutters don't get cleaned in some neighborhoods, and so it's probably quite safe to bury it in a gutter.
Yeah.
And so we had Alex is from the north of England originally, and we had spent a number of years up in Liverpool. And we showed this film when we were artists in residence at St. John's College in Oxford. We showed it at the cinema in Oxford. And that was really fascinating. And I'm going to let Alex tell you a couple things, and then I want to tell an anecdote about showing it to a student and a public audience, and getting their comments afterward.
Great.
Yeah, I thought I loved it. I thought it was a great film. I think it looks really good. The photography is gorgeous, and it's part of that sort of school of English or British, new realism. Like you say, like it's kind of contemporary with the French New Wave or a little after it, and all of these filmmakers like Tony Richardson and Lindsay Anderson, Mike Leigh, Ken Loach, Mike Hodges, all came out of this period. starting a lot of the time as documentary filmmakers. And so there was a lot of attention to detail and a kind of a naturalism. But I like it when they break up the naturalism. I like it when it doesn't remain in naturalism landia, you know. So some of the stuff that Lindsay Anderson does is very entertaining. And of course, the other guy who came out of that period was Ken Russell.
Yes.
So it's a very, very fructiferous period for the British cinema, and it's also a great film about class and a great film about, you know, what is expected of a young man and playing the game and doing it right, and you may get ahead. It's about the meritocracy in a way, isn't it? The idea that if Tom Courtenay will only play the game and will only be a good sportsman, you know, he can graduate from the reform school, you know, and get a proper job, perhaps. You know,
not only is it about the working class, but the protagonist's father, who's dying when we see him in flashbacks, and probably in no small part due to the factory job that he had. And I wanted to ask you, Alex, because you've told me that, what was it your father did?
He worked in an oil refinery. He was, you can hear our dog there. That's Strider barking. It's not Shadow, who's always silent. But my dad was plant safety officer at an oil refinery in Ellesmere Port. The oil refinery, which apparently inspired Ridley Scott for the opening sequences of Blade Runner.
Really?
All those burning, you know, the burn-off towers and the stuff that looks a bit like San Pedro in Los Angeles.
Interesting.
Or that big industrial section of Denver, you know the one I mean when you go to the airport?
Yeah, Commerce City. City
of Commerce, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
So, and that's actually a really important point about how Tom Courtenay's father dies. You know, like, for example, Alice Nutter of Chumbawamba, her father died of asbestos poisoning from having worked in a factory. It's quite common for people to have died as a result of working really, really hard to make money for a whole bunch of other people.
Well, and now we have people who are dying on the front lines just by, working at grocery stores and
yes,
being
it's
bus
exactly
drivers.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and how little they're appreciated, and that actually that leads to your comment, doesn't it? To your anecdote about the audience. Oh, I want to talk about the audience that we showed it to.
Okay.
At one point in the movie, he gets the life insurance money for his father,
right,
and he burns it or tears it up. I can't remember exactly what he does while he's laughing hysterically.
But he doesn't burn all of it, does he? I think does he burn some of it and then use the other part for frolicking? I can't. That's one part that was a little muddy for me.
He burns some of it. He might not burn it all, but he definitely.
I don't remember. He burns it though.
Okay.
And he laughs about that. So at the end, this very handsome young man with a very Southern England accent raises his hand and he says, "I don't understand. Why was he tearing up that money?" So I look at him and I go, "Where are you from?" And he says, What do you mean?" And I said, "Are you from the North or the South?" And he says, "I'm from London." And I said, "Well, you may not understand that people in the North do not think of money in the same way that people in the South do."
They're kind of we're simple folk up there. A lot of us have never seen any money, and so certainly know what it is. You know, when
you may not understand that seemed to him like an act of freedom rather than he should have kept the money, right?
Yeah.
So, and then but the point here is, then I was in the restroom after the movie, and there was a woman in the stall next to me, a young woman, and she says, "Thank you so much for answering that guy. He's my boyfriend, and I'm from the North, and I can never get through to him how I am different from him."
Wow. That's impressive.
So I thought that was really funny. And there was another hilarious thing. I mean, and this was the reason why I wanted to sit in on this, was because the thing that so impressed me was that movie, and showing it to that audience really made clear to me something that I have always been interested in, which is the quote, "It has to be believed to be seen," which is that you can't actually see things that you don't believe to be true, even if they're right in front of you. So at the end, and I hope I'm not giving away too much to the audience, but at the end, the hero is about to win the race. and he's about to beat the young lord, who is the second fastest person in the race. But he gets right to the finish line, and essentially it's like tearing up the money. Yeah. He bows and lets the young lord through.
Yep.
But a dowager sitting in the audience raises her hand and says in a very Lady Bracknell voice, "It's very clear that the reason the young man loses the race is because he is undernourished as a member of the lower class, and the young lord has better nutrients." And
so, in fact, she actually saw it as a plea for better nutrition for the poor. Dog and mad dogs.
Strider, come here. He's commenting on this. He doesn't like the dowager. So, and that fascinated me. I mean, I think Alex and my jaws simultaneously dropped when she said that. But you can really see that happening now, every day in the news. People saying the most bonkers things because they can't actually see what's in front of them. They can actually say things like the federal government should be putting snipers on the buildings in Portland to fire at mothers who are standing there protesting rather than seeing what's actually going on. It's fascinating.
They're malnourished, and the mothers have been driven mad by their malnourishment, you know.
So that was my interest in gegging in on your conversation, but I'll let the cinemaphile take over again.
Oh, no, I mean, it's very good. We did a thing when we were in Liverpool. The last project that we did was like a short, well, not very short, like about 30 minutes, 35 minutes for the BBC, a drama about reality TV, a comedy drama about reality TV shows. And it was called I'm a Juvenile Delinquent, Jail Me. And the idea was that, like, there were these kids who were like all juvenile delinquents, but the TV audience got to watch their crimes and then pick which ones would go to jail and which ones would get a career in media studies with a chance to be a TV presenter. I don't think anybody ever saw it, but we stuck it on YouTube. So if you were to look for I'm a Juvenile Delinquent, Jail Me, you could see our take on the same issues. But the thing that really made me so surprised about Tony Richardson, the director, who does a wonderful job in this film and in other films too, was that he wrote an autobiography and died before he could finish it. So his kids finished it. And the title of the autobiography was Long Distance Runner. So I bought it and read it thinking it was going to be all about the making of his films and the making of this fantastic, fantastic film. And he never mentioned it.
What?
He never mentioned the movie once. He spent about a third of the book is about his time at Oxford, you know, when he was like the head of the Oxford University Dramatic Society and that kind of thing. And so it's so funny because on the one hand, he was able to make this wonderful film about class issues, really about class issues but really he was interested in debating society at Oxford, you know, and that was kind of
that's just sort of bizarre. I mean, of course, no. As you mentioned, he did not have a chance to finish this. So maybe he was going to load up the last chapter. It was going to be all about the actual shooting of the movie or something.
Yeah, I think his editor, if he'd ever got to speak to the editor before he died, the editor would have said, if you're going to call it Long Distance Runner, there better be something about the film in there.
Or speaking as a publisher, the publisher probably named it.
Of course, they came up with the title. That's right. But it's still worth reading because he's an interesting guy, and he made some he directed Tom Jones and the Charge of the Light Brigade and some big heavy duty films and a Jack Nicholson Potboiler and so he's an interesting director.
This is a total random aside, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how here in The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, which is it's about youth defying and having a disregard for authority. And it's played, the protagonist, Tom Courtenay. He actually got an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Dr. Zhivago. In 2001, he was created a Knight Bachelor for his services to cinema and theatre. So he is now Sir Tom Courtenay, which is interesting a little bit to think about in terms of the juxtaposition.
Well, we know a Sir Derek Jacobi. You know, he's a Sir too, right?
Yeah.
Or is he a Lord? Lord, anyway, something like that.
The movie really is about someone defying cultural expectation, which is, you know, quite revolutionary and really moving, especially when you watch it from the beginning and you see what he's trapped in, and you watch him actually free himself from it by freeing himself from the cultural expectation.
Yeah.
He is a long distance runner, and that is his thing. And it's not about beating the hell out of the young lord. It's about running.
Well, and actually, to your point, Todd, those moments when he is free to run around because he's been granted a little bit of a special favor, and you actually do feel the joy because he's not even taking on trails. He's jumping around in the wild, and you see he is relishing just having the sun on his face and going in any direction he wants. And that is when he's happy.
That is the point. Yeah. That is exactly the point of the story. And that was the point of so much of the young writers of the 50s and the early 60s in England, was breaking free of what had been, and were still up until, I don't know, the 80s, the 90s, incredibly bonds of steel about what you could do and you couldn't do in order to move in a society where there was no mobility. You were not really, there was a brief period in the 70s where you could be mobile. But prior to that, you couldn't. And that was the only way he could actually be free, which is why it's so ironic that the Dowager is saying that it was because he was undernourished. That was so funny. I was thinking, oh my God, boy, we have not evolved as a species. We've really got to move on.
But I think actually it's interesting what you said there, because there's a sense in some of those English filmmakers like Mike Leigh, who directed Cass. You remember Cass, the film about the very, very nice later, sort of mid to late 60s film about a working class kid up north with a falcon. But or Lindsay Anderson's films, there are moments when they kind of break out of naturalism and go into these kind of reveries of joy and of pleasure, which are interesting. And you see those in the English filmmakers. But when let's say Kubrick makes A Clockwork Orange, or when Alfonso Cuarón makes Children of Men, which are very good films about England, you know, they don't really, or about London, they don't really get into the joy that sometimes manages to burst out of that my culture.
Yeah, and it's so interesting what you said about the breaking up of the naturalism too, because that's what you loved about Lindsay Anderson, and that was essentially what he was expressing in breaking convention, in breaking dramatic convention. He was expressing breaking out of all of those conventions in the same way that the long distance runner breaks out of the convention.
Yeah, because in If, Lindsay Anderson's If, at one point they kill the chaplain, you know, and then. But it's okay, because then they have to go and see the headmaster, and the headmaster opens a drawer in his desk, and the chaplain pops out, and they now shake hands and apologize, and it all goes on, you know, and so that was some good stuff going on there, some surrealism.
Yeah, and that was the point. That was the point, I think, especially post-war, was that there was an opportunity to move. It's fascinating. I mean, I cannot recommend that movie highly enough. I just think incredible.
The loneliness of the long distance runner.
Yeah. I think it's just
can I ask if you remember, if the both or either of you remember, have impressions of how it was received when you both first saw it? Did you first see it in a theater, and where did you first see it? And you know, because is it true that when it first came out, that some people dismissed it as communist propaganda or something like that? I mean,
probably.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, actually. I mean, because people who are locked down in bonds of their own steel tend to dismiss anything that is freeing of that as quote unquote communist propaganda, whatever the hell communist propaganda.
Well, I mean, he's burning money, for Christ's sakes. That's got to be communist propaganda.
Yeah. Well, I mean, capitalism didn't do much for the North, you know? I mean, it only did a little bit for very few bunch of people who all sent their children south to be educated. So, I mean, and this goes way back. This goes back to the mills, you know, in the 18th century. I mean, I could go on about that for ages.
Hey, but last night we watched a good anti-communist propaganda film, right? I got Todd to watch Heart of a Dog, I don't think she liked it as much as
I was going to say, there is that one scene where you actually see the dog get gets the knife. I thought, well, that might be a bridge too far for you.
we fast forwarded through that bit.
Yeah.
He knew I wasn't going to like that, so he went right past that. I didn't very much like the rounding up of the cats either. But I was so surprised. I was so surprised that Alex liked it, because normally he can't stand any of that stuff that's somehow critical of the proletariat,
of the people's paradise. Yeah, but this is a film by some guys who actually lived there. You have to respect their own take on their own country.
I know, it's amazing. It's kind of the way we Americans feel when Brits make fun of us.
Yeah.
We're just your satraps. We're like the Ukrainians, the Crimeans, or the Mexicans to the American.
Oh, not anymore.
Monolith.
Not anymore. Not anymore. That's fast disintegrating. Anyway, I love that you're my satrap. Are you gonna dress in that satrap outfit later for me? Oh, yay.
Well, listen, I think we're at our we've exceeded our 20 minutes, but I just again want to thank you for a great movie recommendation and for giving some insights to a classic. And did anything else before we wrap it up completely?
Just that it's been delightful to spend this time with you, Pablo.
Always a pleasure, Todd, with you and with Alex as well. So. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much for having us. And another shout out to Russian Film Hub.
All right. Yeah, they're doing a good job there. We'll talk next week, and we'll figure something new for next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay,
All right. Take care. Bye, Alex. Bye, Todd.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.